All right, welcome back to the Rice Report, everybody. Today I am joined by Tony Lyons. We're going to be talking about something that's very important. I always talk about money, politics, and religion, and I think today's topic couldn't be more pertinent to all three of those. We're going to be talking about the chronic disease issue in America. We are the most unhealthy developed nation, not just currently, but in the history of the world. And Tony is working with Maha Action to change the way things are done in food and disclosures, medicine, all these different things. And if you haven't noticed in the news today, RFK Jr. is getting tremendous amounts of pushback from our federal government to make us healthier. And I think these are topics we all need to discuss. So, Tony, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell me what's going on in this environment right now. I know you guys are pushing towards this really hard. I'm surprised. Actually, I'm not surprised because I do cover government corruption quite a bit. I'm not surprised at the pushback from pharma and big ag and food and all these other things. But tell us what's going on with this movement to make America healthy again, yet being told by Congress we can't do it. Like, tell us how
Yeah,
this makes sense to the American people.
I guess that I would start with the idea that if you go up against some of the most powerful companies in the world, companies that are 300 billion, 500 billion, $1 trillion, and what you're telling them is that they're doing things that are poisoning the American public, that are creating chronic disease at levels that you don't have anywhere else on the planet, and that we're going to stop that we're going to fight that tooth and nail, and that we've got an administration that's behind that and that is willing to back that, these companies are going to lose a lot of money. There's no other way to see it, that this gravy train is going to end. And you know, part of that is because of the really bad things that these companies have been doing. That clearly they know that they've been prioritizing profits over people, but it's more than that. It's a level of corruption where we have so many other companies, so many great companies that are that have all kinds of new technologies, breakthrough technologies, medical breakthroughs that we're not using because these companies are holding us back. So from a sort of a capitalism point of view, we could be doing much better. This would help the stock market, not hurt the stock market. This would make more people wealthy. This would lead to growth, not to a shrinking. So this isn't some sort of anti-progress or anti-science mentality. This is a response to just incredible corruption that has kept back all of our ingenuity, that has left us in the dark ages with respect to what the rest of the world is doing. I mean, people have to travel all around the world to have certain kinds of treatments done. They go to Mexico to do stem cells. They go to the Bahamas. They go to Germany to have their knees done. How is it that with all the money we have, with the incredible amount of money that we spend, and all the really great doctors and scientists, that people have to leave the country to get things done?
It's mind-boggling. And I should note you're the director of Maha Action.
Right.
And it is absolutely mind-boggling that someone like you has to take a new direction in life, a new initiative. This isn't something you've done for 50 years. This is a new initiative that the American people have to speak common sense into the world. And the pushback is that, well, if big pharma doesn't thrive, the stock market won't thrive. That's not true at all. The
No.
system is very simple right now. Lobbyists control just about everything. They get pretty much everything that they want because most of our Congress is bought and paid for very simply and for not even that much money. So they poison the food, which makes you sick. Then you have to go to the doctor. Doctor gets paid. Doctor prescribes you pills, which are advertised on television, which I think still right now, we're the only first world country that allows direct pharmaceutical advertisements to consumers, which is
Yeah,
mind
there's one
boggling.
other, which is New Zealand.
New Zealand. So there is someone else. This
Right.
should never be allowed, considering the client, the consumer can't go to the store and buy it. They have to go to a doctor. So now the doctor gets paid, the pharmaceutical company gets paid. Sometimes their symptoms are relieved. Oftentimes their symptoms are relieved with new side effects that they have to disclose for 15 minutes after the commercial's over. And then they have a real chronic disease, which now requires treatments or surgery. We have become cattle that are nothing more than a checkbook for the elites of this country, and it is not right. It's money driven. politically endorsed, and faith, it's wrong. Like based on your religion, I don't care what religion you are, this is not right. So this has to be a tremendous uphill battle for you guys at Maha Action.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, there's no money in healthy people, and there's no money in curing people when they're sick. All the money is in treating people and getting them on a dozen different pills that something like 170 million people take, and many of those people take combinations of those pills. But so that's obviously not good for the country. It's not good for our productivity. It's not good for our profitability. It's much of the upside is just shifted to this very small number of greedy, corrupt companies, and all the downside is shifted on the people of this country and on taxpayers. So if you're um, Medicare or Medicaid, and you have to pay for all the chronic disease that these companies are creating, that's just a bad deal. It's a bad deal for the government. It's a bad deal for taxpayers. There's no reason that we should be doing this. There's no reason that we should allow this to happen. So it's amazing that we have an administration now that President Trump has empowered Secretary Kennedy to address these problems, where our chronic disease rates are just off the charts. We spend 3 times the amount of money that any other country does and have worse health outcomes at every level, from infant mortality rates to childhood obesity and to just a laundry list of chronic diseases. So we can do much better. It's not rocket science. And yet, it's not strange that these companies would engage in these incredible smear campaigns and that they would want to tell everybody who will listen that this is the end of the world, that Bobby Kennedy wants to go backwards in science, that he's anti-science, that he wants to hurt people, that the things that he's going to do are going to hurt our children. And the point is that, even if it was just a logical argument, meaning that it wasn't just about money, and you and I know that, and let's get into that later, but even if it was just a logical argument, these people have had the opportunity. So when Bernie Sanders or Mayor Bloomberg, come out and they attack Bobby Kennedy, saying, he's a threat to this incredible public health system that we have in the United States, and you look around at our children, you look around at all of us, you walk down the street in any major city, and you see people are just really sick. So these people, these companies, these politicians, these scientists, these doctors, these pharmacists, they have failed the American public. Absolutely failed the American public. They had their chance, and we need to shake up the status quo. We need a different way to look at these problems, and we need to fix them. The time is now. There's not going to be another time. It's too late now.
Yeah, and health is all encompassing. I mean, and the problem financially is easy to remedy, right? So if we shut down the system, the pharmaceutical companies and the healthcare companies, and by the way, the biggest winner in all of this, Tony, are the insurance companies. They win no matter what. So
Right.
if we shut all that down, those, if we change things, those companies will get a little bit of a pushback on stock price, things like that. But the reality is, if we didn't have so much chronic disease, so much time off of work to go to the doctor, to go to treatments, to go through recovery from surgeries, we would have healthy people working in other companies that would grow the economy tremendously fast. The
Right.
healthier a nation, the faster the flourish. This is just a fundamental view. But the chronic disease problem that we have in this country absolutely stems from food. So is this something that you guys are talking about? Is all these highly processed foods, the chemicals being put in there, the preservatives? Is this all part of what Maha Action is working on? Is getting disclosure and change in that area as well?
Yeah, I mean, from the way we see it, it's not about what the delivery mechanism is. It could be food, it could be pesticides, it could be drugs, it could be
Or water?
vaccines, it could be the water, it could be anything. These are all just delivery mechanisms for toxins. And so, if we had a system set up where uh, where these half a dozen or a dozen really big companies, really big conglomerates, had to pay for the damage that they're creating, they would stop doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
So the reason that they go to lobbyists, the reason that they fund politicians, the reason that they fund all the major media stations is that that's a better deal for them than just creating better products. So if creating better products was cheaper, they would do that, and they could do that, right? So what they're doing is they're sort of spending money in the smartest possible way, and they think hiring a lobbyist to help them lie to the American public, to help them get products on the market that actually hurt people, and then to claim that they're safe, that's a better deal than actually doing safety studies. But we have to make sure that there's a system in place that protects the American people and protects the future of the country, because you can't have a good, strong, powerful, growing economy um, with people who are sick. With 60% of the people having some kind of a chronic disease. That's just not a long-term successful model. And we can do so much better. And we're just allowing these corrupt companies to harm the economy, certainly in the long run, but also in the short run, because consumers spend so much of their money on chronic disease, right? So we want to unleash a whole period of innovation so that we're at the forefront of public health, so that we have, 320 million people who are healthy, who are active, who can help build the economy, help really make us strong. And I think that's possible. And so the question is just how we get there. But if you're one of those big companies that's just been making a killing on harming people's health, you're going to be willing to spend lots of money. So people shouldn't be shocked. I'm not shocked at these just massive smear campaigns that go on, and that, they're going to do everything they can to make it look like all the people who are trying to do good work are in fact the dangerous ones. But the truth is, they're the dangerous ones. So it's sort of like a 1984 moment where, all the people on both sides say, this is about truth. There's a war on truth, a war on facts, a war on science. And that's actually true. But it's confusing to figure out for the average consumer who that war is being waged by. But if you just think about it, who would have the capacity to wage it most effectively? And for a long time, it's been the companies. Of course, it's been the companies that are making billions and billions of dollars profit. But the problem is that that's falling apart because so many people are sick. And you can't keep telling sick people that they're healthy. That just doesn't work. At some point, that model falls apart.
Yeah, it's ludicrous to look at the actual chronic disease stats and then watch commercials about how healthy a lifestyle Americans live. But
Right.
until penalties are greater than profits, this will continue. This happens in banking, insurance, pharmaceuticals, healthcare, everything. Our penalties are not stiff enough for those who violate trust in the public.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make that. Maybe you can use that as a slogan. Until penalties are greater than profits, there will be no change in this nation. And
Yeah.
right now, those penalties are nothing. Banks do this all the time. They get money laundering fees. They're like, well, we'll keep money laundering, and then we'll run campaigns about how we never launder money, so no one knows it's happening. But we'll just pay this little penalty for laundering money. This has been happening for 2 decades.
Yeah.
Pharma's no different. Oh yeah, I know 75 people died from this, or millions died from our vaccine, or whatever it may be. The penalty is nothing compared to the profits they've made. It becomes a
Right.
business decision. We truly are cattle. And I hope that you guys achieve this initiative. But what kind of pushback? You got to be getting pushback like crazy. I mean, I do a tiny little podcast here, and I get called names 25 times a day. I
Sure.
can't even imagine what you're going through right now. Tell me how the process has been so far for Maha Action.
Yeah, so the process is that they're just hit pieces on everybody who gets involved. So, for example, we have a weekly Zoom call that has about 4,000 people on it who identify themselves as influencers, and then we have about a dozen people who come on who speak to them and give them good ideas. So most of the dozen people coming on are either high level government officials like Dr. Oz, or they're podcasters who have 5 million followers or 8 million followers. So or their doctors, and some scientists and some activists. So the idea there is that we're trying to overcome this captured media and this sort of captured government so that we can make it possible for people to make good decisions for themselves, so that we can tell the truth in this just cesspool of lies and propaganda that sort of control media, but to some extent have convinced the public of all kinds of things that are just unreasonable. So part of the way the process works is that we've been seeing that people who come on our show often then get a hit piece written on them, because people are following us now, seeing that we're able through this network uh, to get in front of a couple of 100 million people, and mainstream media is kind of shrinking, and the number of people who watch ABC News or NBC or CBS is just shrinking and shrinking, almost by the month. And the same is true of like CNN, and then the same is true of the readership of the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal. So the point is that they are going to do everything they can do. They're going to mobilize every bit of power they have to try to make this fail. And but part of the problem that they've been having is that they've attacked Secretary Kennedy for such a long time now, just every day. I mean, the New York Times has written at least 100 articles on him, and they're all virtually the same article.
Yeah.
So you kind of look at it and you think, who are they doing this for? I mean, everybody who reads the New York Times
All
knows
12
that
of
the
them.
New York Times thinks Bobby Kennedy's a bad person, that he's a threat to this wonderful public health system we have, and that there's no chronic disease problem, and but Bobby Kennedy's going to create one. So most readers know that that's silly. Even the readers who take it seriously have heard it 100 times. So you see, that's a failing model. And that's where we come in, is that we have this other view with very serious people coming on, telling stories that are true, and I think that it's getting through to people.
Yeah, one of this is a true story. So one of the I don't know why I need to preface that. One of the conversations I've had about RFK is with an older person who was on an oxygen machine. Okay, so I'm going to preface this by saying there's an oxygen tank sitting next to him and two tubes in his nose. And I said, what do you think about Bobby Kennedy? And he goes, this guy's a lunatic. I go, why is he a lunatic? And he goes, he's trying to destroy our healthcare system. I looked at him. I go, you're on an oxygen machine. You're 64 years old. You shouldn't be on an oxygen machine right now. And then he proceeded to tell me all the medications he takes every day, that he hasn't really gotten much better in about 10 years. And then I kind of said, do you see why they're calling him a lunatic? And he didn't get it. So maybe I'll revisit that guy. He was a very interesting guy in Texas here.
Yeah,
But
that's a great idea. I would think having those kind of conversations. I was in a coffee shop in D.C. that was pretty close to where Secretary Kennedy lives, and I was discussing Kennedy with somebody that I was waiting online with, and the barista, the lady working there, heard me talk about Bobby Kennedy and said, "Oh, do you know that Kennedy comes in here some of the time?" And I said, "No, I didn't know that. But what do you think about him?" And she said, "Well, I used to think he was a total lunatic, but now I think, well, maybe he's okay when it comes to food and some of those kinds of things. But he scares me to death when it comes to vaccines, because I would be dead if Bobby Kennedy had been in charge when I needed to get my COVID vaccine." So I looked at this young lady who looked really healthy, and I was thinking, what number of people who were healthy, who were her age, died of COVID? Yet she believes that she would be dead if she hadn't gotten multiple COVID vaccines. So I asked her whether she knew the stats there, and the stats are just incredibly low. Like, you can't find healthy young people who died of COVID.
yeah,
They're
under
they're just
25,
not
it's
out
almost
there.
zero. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It in fact might be zero. So that the stats you can find, are like 1/100th of 1/10th of 1%.
Yeah.
Just crazy low. But even those people are probably people with serious comorbidities. So that's brainwashing. That's somebody thinking that something would have happened to them when it was literally impossible.
Yeah.
So, my feeling there though is that there's been some progress because she was saying, well, he's good about some things.
Sure.
Whereas I think 6 months before, she probably would have said he's just a lunatic.
What are our, you probably know these stats better than me. Is our life expectancy going up or going down over the last 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, it's been going down. Not by a lot, but it's the first time in modern history where it's going down.
And you
And
would think with a stellar healthcare system that it would consistently be going up and to the right. That would
right,
be, we forget biblical values like pay attention to the fruits, not the words, right? The
yeah,
fruits of the labor right now are not meshing when we hear what a great, incredible healthcare system we have, yet our life expectancy is going down to the right, not up to the right.
yeah. So it is fascinating because it's going down faster than other countries, even though, like I said, we spend 3 times more on healthcare. We have so much more money. So, our life expectancy should be going up. I mean, 30 years ago, I was hearing people say all the time, humans will be living to 120. I mean, we have such great technology, such great scientists, such great breakthroughs, and yet we're just totally failing. We're just poisoning ourselves. And, you know, so I think that the point of Maha is that this can change, is that if you can get through to people and have them exercise, have them eat healthy foods, have them hesitate before they take any kind of medical intervention, really think it through, that we can do so much better, that it doesn't have to take such dramatic change. And that, like I said, I don't think the stock market winds up going down. I think it winds up going way, way up.
Way up.
I think that there's so much economic prosperity to unleash if you have healthy people and if you have real capitalism, because what we have now is a corrupted form of capitalism that doesn't allow the the innovation that's possible now,
Of
right?
course.
Because
Yeah.
what we want is thousands of different companies out there where, all of these, really innovative entrepreneurs are out there trying to solve problems, trying to cure diseases, and having a pathway to get their products to the market. And what we have now is this kind of funnel that's created by these very small number of companies where they're colluding with the government to kind of exclude people from the process, to make it really difficult for products to make it through the FDA or any of the other government entities that are necessary to bring your product to market. And so I think we can do so much better, and that it's just such an incredible opportunity that we have now. And yeah, they're going to say every day, you're going to hear that all these people are dangerous, and we know what they're a danger to. They're a danger to the profits of this very small group of people, and they're a danger to a corrupt system that just really we have to get rid of.
Yeah.
And so with that kind of danger, I want that kind of danger all day long.
Absolutely. And the mere fact that we're talking about people's health and life expectancy and relating it to the economy is a tragedy unto itself. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, in the grand scheme of humanity, this is not a conversation. It should be no matter what the expenses are, we need to take care of our people. And I think that's just not only a violation of trust in the general public. I think in many cases it should be considered almost an act of treason to poison your own people. I mean,
definitely.
imagine any other leadership, any other government throughout history that poison. We heard Assad gassed his people. What's the difference
Right.
between that? And by the way, I believe that's to completely false flag, but that's my opinion. But if you look at that, you had a government who made people sick and they died. That's the end result. Doesn't matter how you got there. Ours has been doing it for 40 years. They just
Right.
didn't do it in one fell swoop. They're doing it slowly over time. These are
Yeah.
treasonous activities.
You were making a great point before that there are these incentives that have been in place to do the wrong thing, and that people don't have the right amount of fear. So if you poison 100,000 people, or if 300,000 people die from an opioid, that you were selling, that you were pushing, knowing that it was dangerous, you should go to jail. You should go to
Yes,
jail for
yes.
a long, long time. And so we have this system where, like you said, the penalties aren't strong enough, and the free market is not allowed to kind of do its job, because the free market and the legal system, they would do a great job of holding people in check. So we're told all these kind of false narratives. One of them is that trial lawyers are a big danger to progress. So we have to protect the big pharmaceutical companies. We have to protect the big food companies, the big ag companies, so that they're then going all around the country, and they've been doing it for a long time, trying to get liability shields. But we know what they're really doing. These are really profitable companies. These are not companies that are beaten down by anybody. These are the companies that are beating everybody else down. They have the resources, they have the best lawyers, the best lobbyists, the best politicians money can buy. They've been out there controlling everything. So they don't need our protection. We need the government to get out of the way there. If they're not going to do the right thing, get them out of the way, cut down these agencies, cut down the regulation, even, because the regulation is just a part of the corruption, and the actual capitalism will work. People create a product that hurts a lot of people, they're going to go out of business.
Yep.
People pollute the water because they have a bad system of running a factory. They go out of business, and then somebody who has a better way of doing it, one that really works, one that works on all sides. Like if you feed people really healthy food, like let's say you're your Medicare or Medicaid, you really should want people to eat healthy foods, because if they eat healthy foods, even if it costs more in the short run, and I don't even think that it would, but if it did, then you don't have to take care of them for the next 70 years. So we need all of our companies to kind of be in the position of having to pay for all the bad decisions that they make. And the people who are really smart, the people who do a better job, the people who actually lead to the public becoming healthier, those people ought to rise up.
Yeah, Aaron, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is why I think Bitcoin people turn to Bitcoin, because the incentive model is perfect, right? And the incentive model in our legal system, our government system, and our health system are completely backwards. You are actually rewarded financially for doing the wrong thing. And I don't know that many people put that together. So I think that's a great segment we just had right there. I'm going to clip that for sure, Tony, because that needs to go out into the market. Um,
That's great.
it brings to mind, though, that we have such a backwards structure that's being designed right now, and we're being lied to about it. Still to this day, our last CPI report said that health insurance costs were down 33% or
Yeah.
24% or something. These are ridiculous numbers. Everybody knows their healthcare insurance is going up. So I want to bring the insurance piece into Maha, because I think it's an important, if we're going to tie together the economics with health, it's important to tie it together insurance. Health insurance is in the top 5 monthly expenses for the average American, even if they're not sick. And the more people who are getting sick, which is happening through pharmaceuticals and treatments, the more expensive it gets for everyone. We've tied this, it's almost socialist, the way that we've tied together. The profits are private, but the losses are socialized. And
Right.
that is a very backward system for a democracy. And I think that you guys are doing just an incredible, because right now the best you can do is raise awareness, because I don't think any of this system breaks until we do one of a few things. Number one, we get rid of Citizens United. You have to get rid of that. You cannot
Right.
have, the reason we're here is because private companies pay lobbyists who let's be honest, who pay politicians for their votes on certain policies, and those
Right.
policies favor where the money came from. That's step one. Step two is to actually use the ruling of Chevron deference and start getting rid of these agencies that allow this to be done. We have been infiltrated through many different forms of corruption into this country. And I just applaud you guys for stepping out there, because I know your life was probably awesome before this, Tony. I know you probably really enjoyed, I know I enjoyed life a heck of a lot more than when I got on social media and did podcasts, because I could just live my life and see what was happening. But it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage to stand up to these groups. And we applaud you for doing that.
Well, I would want to contradict you there just a bit, and I would say, the greatest joy in life, I think, comes and should come from feeling like you're doing the right thing.
Always. Yeah.
So if you're running some big pharmaceutical company and you're, hiding behind liability shields, you know that you're harming people, um, you're making tons and tons of money, but you're really doing bad things, and on some level, you know it. I think those people must be miserable, deep down. Whether they're able to sort of face it or not, it's just kind of hard to tell. But
I've met
but
some
I
of them and they're not miserable. They're demonic. They actually don't care. Like I've met some of these guys. I remember going to a house of a very large, I won't say the name because I like breathing, but a very large pharmaceutical executive. There's 3 or 4 of them there. These people had no soul. I was there for about 30 minutes. It's supposed to be a couple hours of dinner and networking. I excused myself politely and left. And I just remember having this really horrible feeling that like there was no conscience there, Tony. There was
right.
none.
But I would say people who have no conscience, people who have no soul, they might not have guilt, but they're also not really experiencing joy. You
That's
know,
true. Yeah.
because I think that real joy in life comes, like I said, from doing something that you believe is good. You know,
Sure.
if you're not doing that, then I think, even if you can buy everything and you're leading this really decadent life, you're still in some sense really just miserable. You know,
I
I would,
agree with that.
but I would like to go back to the question of liability shields. And like I said, this is not about it's not about vaccines, drugs, food, pesticides, anything. It doesn't matter what the mechanism is for pesticides or for toxins to get into your body and to start causing chronic disease. Um, but with vaccines in 1986, the major vaccine companies went to Washington, had a series of congressional hearings, brought all their lobbyists with them, brought all their, like I said before, bought and paid for politicians. And they made the argument, which was really fascinating, which is that they said, and this is their own words, they said, vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. They're going to cause brain damage. They're going to cause neurological damage. People are going to get all kinds of disorders from them. But having said that,
They said that.
yeah, they said that. This was their argument. Listen to it. So they then said, but if you don't have vaccines, millions of people are going to die in the streets. So so you have two really bad choices here. And they said, well, the one choice is you can not protect us from liability. And then our response to that is we're going to stop making vaccines and then millions of people are going to die. So it was a convincing argument at the time. Ronald Reagan signed it into law. And all of those vaccine companies that were very profitable before 1986 became much, much more profitable right away. But what they did was just an incredible swindle because at the time we were vaccinating for 7 viruses in the US and they right away just went right up and they started making vaccine after vaccine so that now children by the time they're 18 are getting 73 vaccines. So you think about that and you think they said it was unavoidably unsafe when we were vaccinating for 7 viruses. How unsafe is it now? And so anytime that you take away liability, whether it's saying that people can't be prosecuted or people are not going to go to jail or people can't be sued, that's always an incentive to do more. So they want to make as many vaccines as they can possibly make because they have a beautiful product.
And
And
why
that's
wouldn't
a
they?
product where they can't have any liability.
It's frightening. I mean, the frightening part is how come no one pushed back on when you said that to me, and I'm recreating that scenario in my head. If I'm sitting on the other side of the table, I'm going to say one specific statement that solves this entire dilemma. We haven't had vaccines for 10,000 years of human existence, and everything seemed to be fine. Why all of a sudden in 1986, under Reagan, which I think is an important thing to note there, why all of a sudden is there this massive fear of dying of vaccine or of viruses? But the
Right.
American people bought it. They were sold it by politicians. They were sold it by the White House.
Yeah.
They were
And
sold
it
this
was,
product.
what's crazy, like I said, is that those companies were making a lot of money at the time. Then they started to make a lot more money. But they were really smart in that they were sort of coming there saying, look, what we want to do is just help people. What we want to do is create these vaccines that will then save lives for vaccine preventable viruses, bacteria. Um, and then they right away, as soon as they had the liability shield, they just started making vaccines like crazy. And then, of course, you can look at each and every one of these companies, and they've had criminal violations, criminal fines in the
Hundreds of
past.
them.
These are companies that then have this green light where um, what's going to happen if you don't test your product well enough? If you can use your connections to get it through the FDA, what's going to happen? And the answer is nothing's going to happen.
Yep.
So you have this really good incentive to do less and less research and have more and more products. And now the same thing, the exact same playbook is happening with pesticides, where they're saying we need to have a liability shield. People will starve in the streets. Yes, we agree that pesticides are dangerous. We agree that they cause breast cancer. We agree that they cause other disorders. But the other side of it is even more scary, and that's that we won't have enough food. So they come up with these arguments that really don't make that much sense, but they get the best people you can buy to make them. And they get the best lobbyists, the best PR people, and the best politicians to be on their side. And they are out there state by state now trying to get liability shields for companies like Monsanto. And not only that, but they're trying to tag it on to an appropriations bill, and it's number 453, and it would have a liability shield so that you could not sue for any damage that came to you from a pesticide in the United States. And it's crazy. And some of the politicians, I actually believe that they're not lying. That they say they don't think that it does it. They don't think that's what this really means. So they're just being played in all kinds of different ways. Some of them. So the best ones are being tricked, and the worst ones are just being paid.
Right.
But basically, these companies would like to have liability shields for everything, for all the stuff that they put in our food that creates all of these disorders, for the stuff that get put in medicines, in pills of all kinds, in vaccines, in just everything. So they would say, well, everything that we do is for the good of the country. That's our real goal. So we need you to work with us and make it so that these trial lawyers, these dangerous, powerful trial lawyers, can't bankrupt these trillion-dollar companies. There's just an absurdity to it that people sometimes miss.
It's disgusting. Like it is truly disgusting to think that that's the argument. Again, the same question I would pose. How did humanity make it 10,000 years?
Right.
How did we do this for 10,000 years without vaccines and without pesticides? How did it happen? Do we have that? By the way, the pesticide argument is stupid. And you want to know the way that I would test this? Because I'm very much a eyes to see, ears to hear type guy, right? In your own
Right.
life. I'm 48. When I was a kid and we went driving outside of an urban area, you would have to stop at a gas station and get a windshield wiper to wipe the bug juice off of your windshield. I
Right.
haven't had a bug hit my windshield in like 10 years, which tells me one thing: there aren't as many pests that need pesticides. So why
Right.
are we putting pesticides into an environment that doesn't have as many pests? Like, these are very simple questions that no one in DC seems to ask. And I think that's by design, because they're paid not to ask the question, because it's overly
Yeah.
logical and doesn't make sense. Another
But
thing here, Tony, this is
but
all a
those.
lesson on the
Go
slippery
ahead.
slope, right? Like, this is a slippery slope. So 1986, this panel comes out, makes this ridiculous argument of based on fear to get people to agree to what they want to do. That's obvious. And then immediately they start making more money. You start getting poisoned more. This is a warning to the American people about hate speech, about surveillance state. This is the exact same playbook they use for everything. It's so
Yeah.
scary. I know there's trade-offs. We have to make this evil trade-off to avoid this boogeyman evil thing that may or may not happen, but we're certain it'll happen. But it may or may not, but we're certain.
Right.
This is the
It's
same
always
argument.
about fear, right?
Always.
It's always about creating fear, and that this is the lesser evil.
Yeah.
But that's how we've just gone down, down, and down. because we've been afraid of everything. But maybe now we can have this just explosion of innovation and of good ideas. And I think what's really happening, that Secretary Kennedy is sort of step by step changing really important things just day after day. So I think there's a possibility that we could just have such incredible progress in the next 3.5 years. Even on the pesticide, sort of side of it, it's possible that we could have just an explosion of small farmers creating healthy food, because there's been a war on small farmers. I mean, there are all kinds of stories of what
I've covered it a lot. Yeah.
Monsanto and those kinds of places have done to small farmers. But even state and federal laws that are really protecting the gigantic conglomerate farms. So I think it's possible that we could have hundreds of thousands of small farmers, of people growing their own food, and that there's no reason why that couldn't happen. So the argument there is that we're not going to have enough food, that we need junk food or factory farms to feed feed all the millions and millions of hungry people. But I think maybe that's just not true. Maybe everybody could have healthy food, and they could certainly have much healthier foods. And there are all kinds of things that are happening now that are pushing towards that. So, for example, with the SNAP program, the new administration is saying that we don't want taxpayers to fund people to buy unhealthy foods. So if you're on food
Mhm.
stamps, or if you're on any other program where you're getting government funding for food, um, we want to make it so that you can't buy soda with that money. You can't buy candy with that money. You can't just buy, sugary, unhealthy, chronic disease causing foods with taxpayer dollars. And that just makes a lot of sense, because if taxpayer dollars fund that, then you've also got to continue funding
Yeah.
the treatment of all those disorders over decades. And who would want to do that? I mean, who would want those, to make people suffer? Like, the government should be in the position of protecting people from suffering. So if the government's going to fund food, that food should be healthy food. So we really want to get involved in that process, and there are a whole bunch of ways that might come to be.
I couldn't agree with that more. The economic ramifications of that are massive. And more importantly, if we fix the money, we wouldn't have to worry
Right.
about this. If we fix the economy, we wouldn't have people on food stamp. I mean, we still would. There would still be some. But, one thing I want to wrap this up with here, the big takeaway I get from this conversation, it's time to choose the greater good over the lesser evil. And that's where we need to be right now, because our entire selection process for everything health wise is always the lesser evil, never the greater good. And Tony, I thank you. I think the American people thank you for taking this initiative. It's a long road. Let everybody know where they can find you, how they can help, how they can get involved in Maha Action. Like, let us know what we can do to take some action ourselves.
Yeah, the best thing is to go to mahaaction.com. I would love as many people as possible to come on our weekly shows. They're on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. We would like that just to grow and grow. And that's the main thing. I mean, we're hoping to get thousands and thousands of new volunteers. We've got something like 2,900 volunteers nationally now. But we really want to do a lot of things at the state level leading into the midterms. So come to that site, come to our shows, come to some of our parties, which are going to be all around the country, and let's all take our country back. I think
Let's
that's
do
it.
it. I appreciate it, Tony. Thank you so much for being here and spending so much time with us. I really do appreciate it. So God bless
Thank you.
you. God bless this country. And we'll see you all next time here on the Rice Report. Have a good one, everybody.